Alright, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Released in 2003, Silent Hill 3 is often considered one of the greatest survival horror games ever made, and is highly regarded amongst the Silent Hill fanbase as the second best in the series. And that right there pisses me off. Now, don't get it twisted, I too consider 3 to be the second best Silent Hill game, but the gap is so close, I think 2 beats it out for me on a purely personal level. That being said, Silent Hill 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, so I'd like to take this moment to debunk a common criticism I see hurled at this game. That is, why did the series go back to doing the stupid cult stuff? It's so lame, just do more Silent Hill 2, this game's dumb. If you think this, then this video is for you. I may not change your mind, but I hope to give you some food for thought and start a discussion. So without further ado, out with the old and in with the new as we journey through Silent Hill on our quest to kill the past. Before getting into more of the analytical aspects of this video, I'd like to start with a short synopsis of the game's story for those unfamiliar or in need of a refresher. This is a spoiler-filled analysis, so if you wish to remain unspoiled, I'd recommend finishing the game now or just leaving and coming back later. Okay, good, they're gone. I didn't want them here anyway. First thing that happens is our character awakens at a hellish amusement park and makes her way onto the tracks of a roller coaster, and is subsequently hit and wakes up from what is apparently a dream. We learn that her name is Heather Mason, daughter of Harry Mason from the first game, so we can infer that this takes place sometime after the events of Silent Hill 1. Heather makes her way to a shopping mall where she encounters some odd characters and even odder scenery. She's told that she will bring about the so-called rebirth of paradise, and initially dismisses this as any sane person would.
They've come to witness the beginning, the rebirth of paradise, despoiled by mankind.
What are you talking about?
But after encountering horrific monstrosities and strange occult symbols followed by the onset of migraines, Heather attempts to make a beeline home to ask her dad what's going on. The majority of the game doesn't even take place in Silent Hill, but instead in the surrounding town of Portland, as Heather embarks on her odyssey home. A homecoming, if you will.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
When she arrives home, she discovers that her father Harry has been murdered by the mysterious woman following her named Claudia, and her trained combat gimp, but we won't get into that.
He's the one who killed your father. I merely gave the order. So...
Yo, what's up?
From then on, Heather makes it her goal to kill Claudia and get revenge for her father. After a romp through the eponymous town, Heather discovers that she is in fact the reincarnation of Alessa Gillespie from Silent Hill 1 and the baby Cheryl that Harry took home after that game's ending. She is destined to give birth to the god of Claudia's cult. Rejecting this, Heather uses a charm given to her by her father to terminate this act, and Claudia ends up eating the fetus and bringing about the summoning of God.
Disgusting!
Whom which Heather makes quick work of, and her life goes almost back to normal, but she's left forever changed by the events of the game, especially the loss of her father. By that explanation, this seems like a fairly solid plot that doesn't play a bunch of tricks, but it's when you peel back the layers that you begin to understand Silent Hill 3's real trick, and the message that it's trying to leave you with. Simply put, Silent Hill 3 is a game about destroying toxic traditions, breaking the intergenerational cycle of violence, and moving on from an abusive past with the help of others. The game gets this message through in 3 distinct ways: through the characters, the music, and the level/game design. With its final puzzle being based on the tarot, it's appropriate that Silent Hill 3 feeds into the arcana of death, which symbolizes change in one's life and the end of one chapter and the beginning of the next. In a sense, it also feeds into the Fool's journey, as Heather experiences the literal death of a loved one, but also the death of an age of fear and the beginning of the rest of her life.
Heather, did
You don't have to call me that. I'm not hiding anymore.
I'm getting a bit ahead of myself as I want to talk about Heather last, so let's get on to everyone's favorite schlub, big old Dougie Douglas.
What did I do?
Douglas Cartland is kind of the underrated MVP of this game, giving the story an extra emotional punch and giving Heather one hell of a character to bounce off of. I like Douglas's arc of him finding his own reasons to keep going, as bad as Silent Hill 3 portrays the practices of older generations and the harm that they can cause to their children, Douglas stands as a great example that those kind of people can learn and they can change. With the death of his son, Douglas blames himself and the inability to set a good example. He wasn't able to be there and teach his son how to live a good and honest life, and he paid dearly for it. But unlike a certain other father I'm going to talk about later on, this doesn't make Douglas unlikable and or irredeemable. If anything, it turns him into a tragic figure who is able to learn the lessons he couldn't teach any sooner. He finds a second chance to set a good example in the form of Heather, and after the death of Harry, Heather begins to see Douglas as a surrogate father figure. Douglas stands as a perfect embodiment of one of the game's major themes, that of understanding that was then and this is now. Just because you did something or something awful happened to you in the past, that doesn't mean that it will define you for the rest of your life. It may affect and still hurt you to this day, but if you put in the effort to ask for help and heal, you won't be the same person you were yesterday. Douglas's whole character would be summed up right here.
You think you're Superman or something?
You know, I always wanted to be him. Besides,
Yeah.
I want to help you out.
You don't have to feel responsible. I know it's not your fault.
You remind me of my son.
You said nobody was going to cry for you.
Dead people don't cry. Stupid kid got himself shot robbing a bank.
But why?
Maybe because his pop was a penniless good-for-nothing. Who knows? Anyway, now I guess I'll never find out. Sorry. I shouldn't have said you reminded me of a guy like you.
The voice acting here really sells how hard the death of his son hit him and fundamentally changed him, but also reinforces his determination to help Heather by any means necessary. He grew and now he wants the chance to do things right. He may not save the day, but that's what's always endeared Douglas to me. He's never going to stop trying to be someone's Superman. A great hero like Superman can't be great without also having great villains, and Silent Hill 3 has two fantastic ones, a snarky jerk-off and just a big evil motherfucker. I kind of have weird feelings about Vincent. I wouldn't say he's a super important character in both the narrative and thematic sense, but I can't deny that I love him. The best way I can describe him is he's kind of the untraditional audience insert. I say this because, unlike a normal audience insert, he isn't unaware or unfamiliar with the game's universe. In fact, he seems to be hyper aware of everything within the game, and sometimes borders on breaking the fourth wall.
Monsters? They look like monsters to you? Oh no. Don't worry. It's just a joke.
Coming off the gut punch that is Silent Hill 2's ending, yeah, most of the fandom was expecting a giant twist at the end of 3, but like I previously mentioned, the game's story is fairly straightforward and doesn't pull any big tricks in that sense. I really don't have much to say about Vincent, I just wanted to drop that little clip in there since expectation is going to be a very important theme going forward. Vincent isn't a critical character. Despite being considered a half antagonist, he kind of serves only to build up our major villain of the hour. Claudia Wolf may be one of the best antagonists in a horror game, full stop. A major complaint in the transition between 2 and 3 is that the town itself felt like James's antagonist, and the tension gets alleviated when you have a human face on your villain. While I agree the effect created in 2 is almost untouchably good, this kind of thinking really undersells Claudia's character. I'd also like to keep Silent Hill 2 talk down to a minimum, but I will have to dredge it up again even if we don't talk about that game around these parts.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
A good way to explain Claudia is by using another cult leader from the PS2 era. So Final Fantasy X, stay with me here, has this villain named Seymour. He's your typical gotta kill the world to save it from the pain villain that Claudia is. But what they share in common is that they are less main villains and more so vehicles for the true main antagonist to exist. Like I said at the top of this video, Silent Hill 3 is a game that actively shows the negative effects of toxic traditions and ideologies, and the beliefs of the cult check both of those boxes of crazy. When she's first introduced, Claudia is nothing more than a weirdo with a sun god kink, but as the story progresses, the audience begins to learn more and more about her and why she believes what she does. We mainly learn that the cause of all this is that motherfucker Leonard.
Get out of here, you fucker!
Jokes and japes aside, this is a fairly serious topic, so if you have any apprehensions about child abuse, I recommend that you proceed with caution. From a young age, Claudia wanted very little to do with the cult, and seeing the effect it took on her childhood friend Alessa, she knew something was up. Nonetheless, her father, Leonard Wolf, forced that belief on her, and often this came in the form of physical and emotional abuse. Vincent has a line when arguing with Claudia that goes,
What you call faith is nothing more than a child crying out for love.
Claudia, while believing in the same God as her father, differs in the idea that she believes that all mankind can be saved, not just the chosen few. This idea that all people, regardless of deed, can be forgiven can be interpreted as her attempting to justify the actions of her abusive father, whom she still reluctantly cares about. Claudia wasn't given a chance to be happy and loved in this world, so her only hope is that this God that she's been forced to believe in can come down and change this world that hurt her, and perhaps in the process, fix her broken heart. As the game unravels, you begin to question if Claudia really even cares about the rebirth of God, but instead, if she just wants her Alessa back, the only person who ever showed her kindness.
But I am Alessa. My little Claudia, my dear sweet sister.
Alessa? Is it you? Oh, how I've missed you.
Now, I want to take this next step very carefully as to not fuck this up, because simply put, Heather Mason is my favorite female protagonist in anything. I guess the best place to start is her personality. Heather is a snarky, cynical teenager who has a bit of a rebellious streak within her.
Detective? Really? Well, nice talking to you.
But she also has a heart of gold and cares very much for those around her. She just doesn't like to show it often.
You old fool! Getting yourself hurt like that?
Sorry.
Why did you have to do that for me? What'll I do if you die?
What also makes Heather stand out is that unlike an innumerable amount of female protagonists in the horror genre, she's not some damsel I feel the need to protect. Just third birthday, I'm looking at you, dude. She's like, ew, fucking, god damn it, I thought about the third birthday again. Heather is an extremely well-rounded character who is funny, brave, scared, emotional, and capable. I also love how she doesn't have a tacked-on love interest or any romantic undertones. In the end, she only finds solace with Douglas as both a parental surrogate and also a trusted ally.
You gonna be okay alone?
I'm not a child, you know.
Are you sure it's not you who's afraid to be alone?
She's such a fucking awesome character who does her best to keep her head up in the darkest of situations and doesn't mind sharing a piece of her mind even if she's shit-talking a literal god.
Can't be dead. I was gonna kill you.
On a thematic level, I like James's arc a lot more than Heather's, but as a character, James has a bit of the old wet bread personality going on.
James!
Mary? Oh, Maria. It's you. I thought you were... Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway!
Just because I think James has a better arc doesn't mean Heather's story is one of the best I've ever seen. Heather is the culmination of Claudia and Douglas's arcs that I mentioned previously. Much like in Silent Hill 2, the cast reflects the inner turmoil of our protagonist. Mainly, Douglas represents Heather's reconciling of her past as Alessa, and Claudia represents Heather's world weariness and want for some kind of end to her suffering, an easy answer in some cases. As Heather grows throughout the narrative, she begins to understand that there is no easy answer to resolving past trauma. Despite being a reincarnation of Alessa and not technically Alessa, Heather still retains the memories of Alessa's abuse at the hands of the cult, and Claudia tries to evoke as much of this as she can to spark some sort of hatred within Heather. Originally, hatred is what motivates her, and over the course of the game, Heather comes to understand that her anger is justified, yes, but she can't build an honest life out of hatred. Due to her upbringing from Harry, Heather is able to show compassion and care for others, even if she comes off a bit cold. This contrasts greatly with Claudia's upbringing, which, as we discussed, is full of vitriol and malice. When questioned about how a god born from hate could build a peaceful paradise, Claudia remarks that
Happy people can be so cruel. Is it so hard to believe that sympathy could be born out of pain and suffering?
Yet again, Claudia is shown to be brainwashed by the abusive doctrine thrown at her by her abusive father, and is simply attempting to rationalize his and the fellow cult members' actions and beliefs. What I like most about Heather is her ability to make the audience understand and sympathize with her struggle to divorce herself from Alessa. In probably my favorite sequence, Heather fights multiple memories of Alessa, wielding different weapons picked up during the game. It's a fantastic visual metaphor for the internal conflict and self-loathing that Heather is undergoing. I bang on quite a bit about the whole kill the past theme of the game, but that's a bit of an overgeneralization. A key phrase I've been throwing out is toxic tradition, or in simpler terms, just being able to live life after recovering from yesterday's trauma, even if that trauma still hurts today. Heather is struggling to divorce the idea of Alessa from the Heather she is now, but by the end of the game, she stops hating Alessa and begins to accept that yes, she was Alessa, but now she is Heather. She feels bad for her past, but understands that it's all over. She reaches a happy medium by using her real name Cheryl, one that invokes the town of Silent Hill itself, but it's also a name given to her by Harry, which is a positive influence in her life. She keeps her blonde hair as well, aka her most visually striking physical trait, and something that immediately identifies her as Heather.
You gonna let your hair color go back too?
I don't know. Don't you think blondes have more fun?
If I had to put a pin in it, the balance between who you were and who you want to be is kind of the main point of Silent Hill 3. Accepting that things happen and that things will happen, but still living in and for today is a major struggle every character undergoes as we watch them deal with this all too familiar problem in varying ways. One of the most emotionally striking moments for me is after the final fight and just watching Heather break down sobbing over the death of her dad as reality begins to really hit her. Yet she still can get up and face Douglas with a smile and even throw in a little joke.
Is it really over?
Not yet. You're still alive.
Heather, what, Heather?
Just a joke.
You've got terrible taste.
Sorry.
That moment is what sold Heather to me as a character, and it's stuff like that that endears her so much to me. I also find Heather special for being a female character who deals with distinctly feminine issues such as abortion. Remember, this is a game that was made during 2003, and the topic of abortion is still a hot button issue to this day. So to hint towards pro-abortion rhetoric was a bold choice to say the least. What makes it work so well is that it's well woven into Heather's arc of dealing with past trauma and defining herself as she matures. She rejects the role handed down to her by a previous generation to explore everything life has to offer, and that starts with destroying the toxic ideals of a town gone too far. Taking a step away from characters, I'd like to discuss Akira Yamaoka's score for this game. Now, it's no secret that Yamaoka is probably the greatest video game composer who ever walked the face of the earth, but Silent Hill 3 is in my opinion his masterpiece. See, in most games, music is used to set the tone and expand upon emotions and themes brought up within a scene. Fantastic example is how Nier and Nier Automata's score inform the idea of evolving human language to reflect how human interaction evolves and can become distant. But in Silent Hill 3, the soundtrack serves to tell aspects of the story that words simply couldn't. By having this effective score, it allows the audience to process characters' emotions in real time, as you can really get into their heads and understand where they are. Compared to the previous games, 3 has what I would describe as a nostalgic tone to its music, compared to 1's horror-focused pieces and 2's somber melodies. 3 almost sounds like a place you used to know but are now unfamiliar with, yet the feeling of wistful want still stings within you. In previous games, Yamaoka focuses on instrumentals and the occasional noise influence track, but in 3 he began to include more vocals on his songs. Those lyrics really do amazing work when it comes to selling the emotion of a scene. My 2 favorite examples are the tracks Hometown and Letter from the Lost Days. Hometown tells the story of a man who attempts to take on Silent Hill and eventually admits defeat in the line,
Now it's too late for me. This town will eventually take me.
This could be interpreted as the story of Harry, who was a victim of Silent Hill, in the line,
She's gone, and fear has overcome. He was walking the mile. He was walking alone.
inform the fact that even if someone like Harry escapes the town, no one can truly understand his experiences. The fact that it uses the melody of Silent Hill 1's theme and reinforces Harry's journey leading to 3, and it plays at the end of the game showing that Heather has finally broken the cycle of violence and truly has defeated Silent Hill, despite the sacrifice of her father. Letter from the Lost Days is written from the perspective of the singer's past self writing a letter to her in the present day, wishing for her happiness. In particular, I love the scene this plays over, which is during the car ride to Silent Hill, which I'll get into in a bit. But needless to say, this song is mostly about the struggle between Alessa and Heather, and how even at her worst time, there's one person out there hoping Heather can be happy. Some people theorize that this is also from the perspective of Claudia, and with the repetition of the line, "We were put on this earth to feel joy," it could really go both ways, and honestly, I like hearing that interpretation a lot because it serves to make Claudia a more sympathetic villain. Overall, the soundtrack is A+, and I often find myself listening to tracks when I'm doing work or just want to vibe. So not only does it stand on its own as a fantastic set of songs, but also as an effective thematic informant. Now, I'd like to transition to something I feel is wholly unique to Silent Hill 3 as a video game sequel, and that's level and game design. With the previous 2 points, it sounds like Silent Hill 3 would have made an awesome movie that has the emotional punching weight of the all-time greats.
You're a demon! You must be destroyed!
Not today.
But it didn't. It's how the game is designed to take advantage of returning players and actively get across its theme of moving on and no longer living in the past. The direction and design of Silent Hill 3 is what puts this game over the top in every conceivable way. Throughout this video, I've been invoking the previous 2 games as examples to compare 3 to. Problem with this is, I'm kind of spitting in the face of what Silent Hill 3 is trying to get across. You see, every level in this game takes place in an area where an action is performed on repeat every day like clockwork. A mall in the shape of an endless circle, a subway running the same trains daily, an office complex where the same routines get played out, even to the point where there's a full dance studio, aka a place where cycles and repetition are drilled endlessly. Then we actually get into Silent Hill, and oddly enough, we revisit areas from 1 and 2, but something is different. A lot of things, actually. Let's start with Brookhaven Hospital, since it comes first. Most, if not all, the rooms you can access in Silent Hill 2 are locked in 3, and vice versa. The game actively punishes you from trying to use old knowledge from 2, and a prime example of this is, in Silent Hill 2, after taking the west elevator, James gets a transmission on his radio about a quiz show. When he goes to the storeroom on the 3rd floor, there's a box where he can input his answers and win a prize. Now, in Silent Hill 3, if you go in that same storeroom, there's just that. Other examples of this is you often run into rooms that have nothing but enemies in them and maybe an ampule or health kit to give you some health that you lost back. People may see this as poor design and punishing exploration, but I see it as feeding back into that theme of being able to move on from past trauma. Yes, you are hurt and suffered due to your situation, but you had no idea that it would happen. Yet in the end, you can still heal and continue moving forward. It may be me justifying shoddy design, but considering this is the only area that really does this, I'm inclined to believe that it's intentional. Next is the Lakeside Amusement Park, a redesigned area from Silent Hill 1. This area and the next both have my favorite aspect of character development in this game, that being Harry's notes. The notepad served as the first game's save points, but here you can read them and get a glimpse into the struggle that Harry was going through back then. Even if he has no lines in 3, these notepads and the context we have from Silent Hill 1 really flesh out his character, and finding these after his death earlier in the game give his actions a whole new emotional impact. Skipping ahead slightly, my favorite is when Heather finds the diary in his room in the church. The text reads, "I sometimes have the sense even now that that girl is a reincarnation of Alessa. I don't worry about it much now. That's all forgiven. You were in love, Cheryl, or was that Alessa? Now Cheryl is Alessa again. No matter whose reincarnation she may have been, that girl is my most beloved treasure. But that name was a mistake. At the time I thought of her only as a replacement for my lost Cheryl. When she knows the truth, will she feel bad? That's what worries me." I love the mini arc you retroactively get for Harry as he struggles with the concept that his daughter may be the thing that kills him. In the end, he was right, but I don't think he was afraid of dying. He was just simply afraid of leaving the person he loves the most alone. Back on topic, the haunted house in the amusement park is a fantastic reinforcement of the idea of breaking cycles. The concept of a lame, cheapo attraction that runs the same show like clockwork, suddenly breaking down and forcing you to escape its loop, is such a good visual shorthand that the game doesn't have to shove down your throat. It's also home to the one and only jump scare in the game, which is appropriate since it's a lame horror ride, sharply contrasting with the real horrific monstrosities that you've been encountering from the beginning. Beyond the reincorporation from Silent Hill 1, the amusement park is also looping back on the opening of the game, but with that traumatic beginning, Heather has learned and is able to save herself from repeating the same mistakes. You can still walk on the tracks and die like at the beginning, and I find that to be really emotionally resonant. We witness firsthand how this journey has changed Heather and helped her mature in a sense. The last area I want to get into is my least favorite to play through, but my favorite thematically, the Church of Silent Hill. To put it simply, what I love most about this area is that it's Heather confronting her trauma and abuse head first and putting her past to rest. As difficult as this area is with little to no healing items and the insane amount of enemies teeming about, it works to further develop Heather's arc. She struggles, fails, and then struggles some more to conquer her past and define her future. Within the chapel, you find 4 distinct bedrooms: Claudia's, Vincent's, Harry's, and Alessa's. All of these trapped souls are taken advantage of by the hate of Silent Hill and cursed to die with the town. You also find Alessa's hospital room, which Heather remarks that she can't stand to be in, showing that while she can't fully face everything that's happened just yet, she's getting there. In that room, you find 2 ampules, which is some much needed healing both physically and mentally for Heather. I also love how Alessa's room serves as the point of overlap for Harry's character and Heather's. Reincorporating the final room from Silent Hill 1 serves to give the audience this sense of closure and finality to it all, like saying that this chapter of Silent Hill is officially coming to an end. This is doubled down on by Heather recognizing Alessa's things and commenting on how they don't fit her anymore, or she doesn't need them, since she's fundamentally become a different person. Vincent and Claudia's rooms serve only to expand on the aforementioned details of those characters that I don't feel the need to go much deeper into. Needless to say, this motif of being trapped within Silent Hill's grasps serves to reinforce the cyclical themes and Heather's role in breaking it. I want to talk a bit about monster design, and I think the best place to start with is the final boss, God.
This is God?
God being made from Heather and Claudia is representative of the combined abuse suffered by both parties, and Heather is directly confronting the awful things those in Silent Hill had done to her. The boss looks fragmented and runs on a very predictable cycle. If you're aware of what to do, the fight is a breeze, almost as if she isn't a god at all. The fact that you fight this monster in a deep crevice hints that it's more demonic than divine. Being born from Claudia, it shows a striking resemblance to Alessa, and as I mentioned, Claudia idolized Alessa, so this lends credence to my theory of Claudia not caring too much about the rebirth of paradise. It also really serves my point of killing the past. First, Heather kills the memory of Alessa on the merry-go-round, and now she's killing the deification of her trauma that the cult has idolized for so long. Everything painful is found within Silent Hill's God, and Heather takes it upon herself to destroy it, despite how much she struggles to do so. The key fact that Heather doesn't kill Claudia is proof that she is broken the cycle of violence I keep mentioning. Heather can leave with a clean conscience, and she may have hated Claudia with all of her heart, but instead of just perpetuating that hatred, she took it out on her most deep-seated issues and came out stronger because of it. Beyond that, all the other monsters in the game are designed around the theme of restraint. They all moved in slow, pained motions, or were forcefully split in 2 and held together by bandages. They also contrast with 2's design, where most of the monsters are very dainty looking and move in a feminine manner. In 3, all the monsters are imposing male figures, except for the dogs. And they seem to represent the idea of a maturing woman such as Heather being held down and attacked by an overbearing male patriarchy. The enemy that stands out the most for breaking this masculine design convention, except for the dogs, is the iconic nurses from Silent Hill 2. And I'm already aware of what some people would say about that. But Michael, aren't the nurses James's monster? Why would they use this? Ugh, it's just another cash grab. Well, cash grab maybe, but they do have a legitimate reason to be here. Heather, upon entering Silent Hill, is regaining her memories of Alessa, and she can't quite remember it all, but she does remember the hospital room where Alessa was tortured for hours upon hours. So these nurses are just a convenient way to truncate Heather/Alessa's traumatic experience into one enemy design. Silent Hill always does a fantastic job of telling you a lot with little words, as Masahiro Ito's monster designs in 3 are top fucking notch. They all imbue the audience with a sense of dread and also serve to intelligently inform you what kind of mental trials our protagonist is going through. I can talk all day about the millions and millions of tiny details that go into making this game the masterpiece that it is. The only scene I need to show is this.
What's wrong? Feeling sick?
My head's pounding like the worst hangover ever.
Maybe you're car sick.
No, I'm just trying to remember. My childhood. Something terrible happened in Silent Hill 17 years ago.
The drive to Silent Hill is one of the most thoughtful and introspective moments in the series. Despite being exposition, it glues you to the screen solely through Heather Morris's performance. It's clear through how her voice cracks and how she's choking back tears that Heather's about to confront something she wishes she could just forget. Ending the scene off with a callback to the end of Mary's letter from Silent Hill 2 recontextualizes that line from being someone's last words to the first words of the rest of Heather's life. And that shit just fucking hurts my heart, man.
You see, that girl had special powers.
Powers?
Her classmates called her a witch. She could make things happen with her mind. She could kill people just by wishing for it. But in the end, that god was killed by a single person. My father, Harry Mason. I guess it wasn't much of a...
Plus, the aforementioned letter from Lost Days playing just twists that knife and sells the scene and the entire meaning of the game so well. I always find it amazing how Silent Hill games can have just that one scene that always gets to me, and the quiet pain of this short drive just rips my heart out every single time. Silent Hill 3 is a beautiful game that means a lot to me. Accepting that it's not yesterday anymore is one of the hardest things I've come to learn in my short life, and this game was a big part of helping me learn that lesson. We've all tried and failed to reconcile things that have either happened to us or that we've done in the past, and that's okay. Things fall apart and the world comes crashing down sometimes, but you're still going, aren't you? Of course you are, because that was yesterday. Sometimes you feel like nothing will ever get better, but there's always one person who wants you to be happy, and that's you. You can't make tomorrows out of yesterdays. The best way to get a great tomorrow is to simply make it through today. Sometimes it really is best to just kill the past.
It was so sudden. I never had a chance to tell you how happy you made me.
My name's Michael. Let's talk again soon.